Heroes who die in war get their names on a monument. Those who live get their fortunes. This quote appears in the 2010 movie The Expendables, which depicts the life of a group of elite mercenaries. For these soldiers, money is equivalent to a real test of survival. But in real life, the profession is darker and more complex than what we only see in the movies. Being a mercenary can mean earning $150,000 a year or more, but there are harsh conditions. Working in the most dangerous areas of the world and living with the risk of death at any moment. So how does this dangerous profession work? Let's step into the world of the world's most famous mercenary groups, from Wagner to Blackwater. Mercenaries were the invisible hands that changed the course of wars, sometimes deciding the fate of great empires. The 14th century White Company was both feared and admired in the wars between Italian city-states. This group of English mercenaries played a key role in Florence's victory over Pisa, thanks to the tactical genius of their leader, Sir John Hawkwood. Moving into the modern era, executive outcomes made history in Sierra Leone in the 1990s, securing the government's victory over rebels. With just 200 mercenaries, this operation completely changed the course of the Civil War. More recently, the Wagner Group proved its influence on the ground and in global politics by taking on the task of protecting Russia's strategic energy interests in the battle for Palmyra in Syria. Mercenaries are no longer just fighters, but hidden actors in global politics and economic interests. But what is the secret behind their enormous influence? Mercenaries are not only warriors, but also strategists. Their real strength lies in their ability to make the right decisions at the right time on the battlefield. For example, Executive Outcomes, best known for its success in Sierra Leone, won on the ground not only through combat prowess, but also by anticipating rebel movements through intelligence and logistics management. Eben Barlow, the company's founder, said in a statement years later, "We were there to win a war and get an absolute result, not prolong it. To do that, you need to make decisions quickly and act decisively." Barlow's words clearly show how different mercenary groups are from ordinary armies. Fast, efficient, and precise. This is the basis of their success. So who are these armies without commanders? Founded in 2014, the Wagner Group is seen not only as a mercenary organization, but also as a tool to secure political and economic interests. Although the size of the group varies, it is known to be able to deploy up to 10,000 soldiers in different regions at the same time. This is about twice the size of the regular army of Estonia, a NATO ally. Wagner's personnel range from former Russian Special Forces soldiers to prisoners of war. However, Wagner's activities are not limited to known fronts such as Syria or Ukraine. The group also draws attention with its presence in Africa. In 2021, the government of Mali turned away from Western countries and turned to the Wagner Group for security. Here, Wagner not only fought against rebels, but also took on the task of protecting Mali's gold mining sites. According to local sources, Wagner sent around 1,000 mercenaries for these operations. In one gold mining operation, they reportedly inflicted heavy casualties on rebel groups with the support of Russian-made Mi-24 helicopters. One of these helicopters can carry about a train carload of ammunition, which is a striking data point to understand the logistical dimension of Wagner's operations. The financing of these operations in Mali is remarkable. Wagner is allegedly paid not only for military services, but also for his share of the gold mines. This makes the group not only a fighter, but also an economic player. One of Wagner's commanders in Mali made the following comment about the gold mines: "Every bullet is an expense for us, but these mines make every bullet worth it." The Wagner Group's operations are notable not only for their military successes, but also for the stories behind the scenes. For example, in 2017, it was revealed that Wagner soldiers serving in the Central African Republic had made a secret deal with the local government in exchange for the protection of diamond mines. In 1 year alone, the revenue from these mines is estimated to have exceeded $15 million. According to one Wagner soldier, it doesn't matter what the target is, oil, diamonds, or gold. We always guarantee what we get. The Wagner Group's influence in Africa is not only economic, but also geopolitical. For example, one of the military bases used by the group covers an area about the size of 5 football fields and houses infrastructure for drones and heavy weapons systems. This shows that Wagner has a technological capacity far superior to local forces. Wagner's military infrastructure is one of the biggest drivers behind the group's influence. Equipment used in the field includes tank-class T-72 armored vehicles and BMP-30 infantry fighting vehicles equipped with 2mm automatic cannons. These vehicles give Wagner soldiers a great advantage, especially in Africa's challenging terrain. Wagner's air fleet is dominated by Mi-8 helicopters, which not only transport military personnel, but are also used for attack missions. The fuel tank of one Mi-8 helicopter can fill the tanks of about 20 small vehicles, making long-distance operations possible, from Mali to the Central African Republic. Another source of strength behind Wagner's operations is its extensive logistics network. Supply shipments from one Wagner base to another are often delivered by military cargo aircraft. One of these aircraft, the Il-76, can carry the weight of a small apartment block when fully loaded. This kind of logistical capacity makes Wagner a much more effective force than local armies. In addition, the group is supported by ammunition and weapons supplied directly from Russia, making its operations sustainable. The Wagner Group's logistical capacity and military superiority make it one of the most effective players in modern warfare. But Wagner is just one example in the world of mercenaries. One of the most controversial groups that laid the foundations of this shadowy sector was Academy, once known as Blackwater. US-based Blackwater was one of the first groups to make a name for itself in the mercenary world, both for its innovative approach and its scandals. Founded in 1997 by Eric Prince, the organization paved the way for modern private military companies with its key role in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Blackwater's name first came to the world's attention on March 31, 2004, after a shocking incident in Fallujah, Iraq. 4 Blackwater employees were attacked and brutally murdered during a mission. Their bodies were burnt and hung from a bridge. These images were widely reported in the world media, and, as Jeremy Scahill puts it in his book, Blackwater's name was etched into the public consciousness along with the bodies on that bridge. The incident has sparked a global debate not only about Blackwater's presence in Iraq, but also about the dark side of the mercenary world. Despite this and other scandals, Eric Prince defended Blackwater as a professional security organization. Our people are in the field protecting U.S. soldiers. Otherwise, we would have seen more deaths, he said in an interview trying to justify the company's activities. But only a few years later, Blackwater's presence in Iraq would be marked by an even bigger scandal. Blackwater's name came to the fore again on September 16, 2007, with another tragic incident in Baghdad's Nisour Square. The company's mercenaries were providing convoy protection for the U.S. State Department when they opened fire uncontrollably in a shootout. In that incident, 17 Iraqi civilians were killed and more than 20 wounded. Witnesses claimed that Blackwater soldiers launched the attack without warning, while company officials claimed it was a defensive response. However, a statement in Jeremy Scahill's book summarized the situation. On the battlefield, Blackwater soldiers behaved like cowboys, not professionals. The Nisour Square massacre was a turning point for Blackwater. The company was heavily criticized internationally while the Iraqi government banned Blackwater from operating in the country. The incident sparked a global debate about the legal status of mercenaries and their ethical limits on the battlefield. The following statement by a Blackwater soldier, recorded in court, captured the magnitude of the incident. "I still carry the impact of what we did that day. This is the price of doing business." After the Nisour Square massacre, Blackwater lost its presence in Iraq and faced a global image crisis. Such was the backlash that the company's founder, Eric Prince, changed Blackwater's name in 2009, first to Xe Services and then to Academy. These name changes were seen as an attempt to put the company's controversial image in the mercenary world behind it. But as Jeremy Scahill put it, changing a name cannot erase the past. The company's focus has since shifted to undertaking less high-profile missions. But Academy was still notable for its huge U.S. government contracts and operational size. The company is estimated to have close to 10,000 personnel. This was equivalent to the strength of a modern infantry division. Academy's Moyock base in North Carolina, USA, is one of the largest private military training facilities in the world. Covering an area of approximately 28 square kilometers, the base is the size of a small town. The base includes specially designed areas for sniper training, explosive disposal operations, and close combat techniques. It is also capable of recreating a real war environment with airspace control and simulation centers. Academy's logistical power also draws attention. The company carries armored Humvee vehicles, modern sniper rifles, and personnel equipped with night vision devices. The special cargo planes used to provide logistical support are comparable to a 76 or C-130 class aircraft. They can carry enough equipment to fill a football field in a few hours. The company's inventory also includes Little Bird helicopters, which are primarily used in urban operations. These helicopters can land in an area the size of a basketball court and are highly maneuverable, allowing them to move effectively through narrow city streets. Academy's logistics system is flexible and fast enough to provide military support anywhere in the world within hours. Academy's operational mobility is not limited to inventory and logistics. With its training capacity and technological infrastructure, the company remains at the top of the mercenary world. Its billion-dollar contracts with the U.S. government make Academy one of the most important private players in modern warfare. Academy's operations are so specialized that they exceed the capabilities of a regular army. They are not an army, but they can support an army when needed. Stepping into the world of companies like Academy or Wagner means much more than just looking for a job. It is possible to work in such groups, but it means not only fighting, but also a constant gamble for survival. Imagine yourself in the desert, constantly burning in 50-degree heat, surrounded by deadly snipers, surrounded by attack drones constantly circling overhead. Or imagine defending a mining site in the middle of the African rainforest with only a flashlight and limited ammunition against rebels using night vision devices. The real cost of work for a mercenary is not limited to the risks. Psychological pressure, lack of legal protection, and the lack of social security that a regular army offers make this world even more dangerous. As one member of Wagner said, "If you make a mistake here, it's not just the end of you. It's the collapse of an entire mission." But these companies have become an indispensable part of modern warfare, overcoming the diplomatic constraints of regular armies. They are doing the shadow work of states and rewriting the rules of war. And as technology advances, their influence is likely to grow even further in the future with unmanned drones and AI-powered combat systems. The world of mercenaries is not limited to well-known names like Wagner or Blackwater. In this shadowy sector, there are other groups that have made an impact in different geographies. Nepal's legendary Gurkha soldiers have been working as Singapore's elite security force for years. Although they are an official military force, their effectiveness in special missions is similar to that of mercenaries. While Gurkhas are known for their sniping and close combat training, they are especially used in high-risk protocol missions. Founded by former Executive Outcomes members, this group carried out a successful operation against Boko Haram for the Nigerian government in 2015. STTEP is known for going beyond conventional military operations to train and equip local forces. Co-founder Eben Barlow's strategic approach has made them a major player in the world of private military companies. A prominent player in the Iraq War, Triple Canopy is particularly known for its security services for the U.S. State Department. The company's success in protecting diplomats in high security areas has earned it a respected position in the mercenary world. It also stood out with its advanced technological infrastructure and logistical power during its operations in the Middle East. UK-based Aegis has played an active role in operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. Rather than large-scale military operations, the company generally focuses on private security and training missions. In 2005, it received a $293 million contract from the U.S. Department of Defense, demonstrating how profitable modern private military companies can be. Sandline International, which rose to prominence in the 1990s with operations in Papua New Guinea and Sierra Leone, was an example of how mercenary companies could shape local politics. However, it ceased operations in 2004. Its founders said they had to close the company due to political pressures and misunderstandings. Each of these companies has played different roles in the world of mercenaries and have gone down in history as strategic forces that have changed the course of wars. But there is one common fact: they all remain part of both the economic and political face of war. It takes courage to explore this world, because mercenarism is a world not only of money, but also of strategy, power, and dancing with death. And this video is just the beginning of this story. In the next video, we will talk about the surprising victories of mercenaries in the past, the overlooked scandals, and how they will change the course of future wars. Get ready for this unknown face of modern warfare, because here everything depends on a deadly game plan.
They are known as fearless warriors. They are said to never back down, take prisoners, or even put their knives back in their scabbards without shedding blood. For them, death is not something to be feared, but an honorable end. They have made a name for themselves on battlefields from England to India, from Iraq to the Falklands. They are said to strike fear into even the world's most elite armies. But are they really history's deadliest warriors, or just an army of mercenaries shrouded in legend? The truth is that every story told about the Gurkhas creates the impression that they were invincible. Loyal soldiers fighting in the colonies of the British Empire, part of a unit that terrorized the enemy in the dark jungles even under a hail of bullets. But throughout history, we have always questioned how well the legends matched the reality. Today we examine who the Gurkhas really were and how well the legends reflect the truth. Today, the world knows them as the elite fighters of the British Army. But the story of the Gurkhas begins not on the battlefields of Britain, but in the rugged mountains of Nepal, surrounded by sheer cliffs. It was a ruthless testing ground where only the strong survived. Tribes like the Gurung, Magar, Rai, and Limbu have kept the tradition of fighting alive for centuries. For them, war was not a profession, but a way of survival. But one day, these fearless warriors would face one of the greatest empires in history. In 1814, the British East India Company wanted to expand its borders in India, but they faced much tougher resistance than they had anticipated. When the Anglo-Nepal War began, the British thought the Gurkhas were just a small mountain tribe, but they were wrong. The Gurkhas turned high mountain passes and dense forests into battlefields. They were few in number, but they could move twice as fast as the enemy. The British were amazed by the fighting spirit of these warriors. Towards the end of the war, British generals admitted they would rather die than attack the enemy. The Gurkhas etched their name in history with fear and respect. When the war ended in 1816, the British realized how difficult it was to fight these men, but more importantly, they saw the value of persuading them to fight on their side. And so the Gurkhas entered a new era as mercenaries of the British Army. But this was only the beginning. The Gurkhas were much more than just part of an army. Their legend was just being born. Some need years to prove their mettle on the battlefield. For the Gurkhas, a few seconds were enough. After the British recruited them, these warriors became not just a mercenary band, but a legend. But behind every legend there is truth and exaggeration. Were the Gurkhas really the unchanging victors of the battlefields, or were they just a horror myth? At the outbreak of World War I, the British Empire began recruiting soldiers from all its colonies. Gurkhas were sent to fight on unfamiliar fronts in Europe. In 1915, they fought against the Ottoman army at Gallipoli. They are described as sneaking into Turkish trenches, attacking with kukri knives while their enemies slept. But most historians find these stories exaggerated. For Gallipoli was a scene not only of bravery, but also of heavy British defeats. The Gurkhas fought, but no one won on that front. Their real triumph came in World War II. Their fight against the Japanese army in the Burma campaign once again etched them in the history of warfare, shooting the enemy from ambushes, advancing silently with their deadly knives. These warriors turned the tropical forests into their hunting grounds. Lakhiman Gurung, one of the Gurkha soldiers, threw 2 of the 3 grenades that fell into his hand back at the enemy, while the third exploded in his hand. He fought on with one arm and won the Victoria Cross. But one of the greatest legends came in 1982 in the Falklands War. Argentine soldiers allegedly abandoned their positions when they heard that the Gurkhas were going to attack them. This story has been circulated, but there is no proof of it in the actual records of the war. One thing is beyond doubt, however. The very name of the Gurkhas was enough to terrify the enemy. But did they really deserve this reputation? Or like so many warriors in history, were their stories bigger than the battlefields?
Legends are born on the battlefields, but true warriors are shaped on the training grounds. For the Gurkhas, war is not an innate talent, but the result of deadly discipline. It is not just their courage that makes them some of the most feared soldiers in the world, but the superhuman training they undergo. But is this training truly extraordinary, or is it part of a legend? Every year, thousands of young men from Nepal's mountain villages apply to join the Gurkhas' selection process, but only the best survive. Candidates are put through days of endurance tests. The most famous is a deadly test known as the Doko race. Candidates have to run up steep hillsides with a 25-pound sack of sand strapped to their backs. This test measures not only physical strength, but also willpower. Those who give up are eliminated. But the training does not end there. Selected soldiers are taken to England and trained in modern warfare techniques, special operations, and close combat. But the biggest symbol that distinguishes the Gurkhas from other military units is the kukri knife. This curved and deadly knife has been their symbol for generations. When a kukri knife is unsheathed, blood must be spilled is a battle tradition, but historians say it is largely a myth. In reality, the Gurkhas are known to use rifles and modern weapons in battle, but what even their enemies fear is how ruthless they can be when they have to use this knife. Their training turns not only their bodies into weapons, but also their minds. After years of selection and training, only the best qualify to join the British Army's Gurkha Brigade. But does this rigorous training really make them the world's deadliest warriors? Or is this discipline part of a horror story magnified by myth? A fearless killing machine for their enemies and a loyal warrior for the British. But who are the Gurkhas really? Are they really mercenaries who obey Britain's orders without question, or are they something more? Gurkhas have served in the British Army since 1816. The British Empire has collapsed, the world wars have ended, but the Gurkhas are still fighting under the British flag. And why is that? The first answer is simple: money. A Gurkha soldier is paid far more than he could earn in Nepal, and the pension benefits he and his family receive after serving in Britain are life-changing. But it's not just about money. When Gurkhas join the British Army, they take an oath to serve the Queen in Britain faithfully. This is not just a contract, but a tradition that has been passed down through generations. So what makes them different from the Wagner Group, Blackwater, or other mercenaries? Soldiers fighting for modern private military companies, PMCs, operate on a purely commercial basis. They fight for whoever pays the highest price. Gurkhas, on the other hand, don't work for different countries like a PMC, but are a special part of the British Army. For them, it is not just a job, it is a matter of identity. They are also similar to the French Foreign Legion, but with one difference. Gurkhas never surrender on the battlefield. Even the generals who have commanded them throughout history have made this clear. So, are the Gurkhas a mercenary army? While they are technically a paid fighting unit, the biggest thing that sets them apart from modern PMCs is that they are trained in a centuries-old culture of honor and loyalty.
But one question remains. Is it really their martial heritage that makes them so loyal and disciplined, or is it a myth that Britain has skillfully constructed? Every war has its heroes, and every hero in time becomes a legend. For centuries, the Gurkhas have been portrayed as an invincible warrior class, but history shows us that no army or unit is perfect. But are the Gurkhas really as strong as they are portrayed, or do the myths surrounding them overshadow the reality? Examples such as their failure at Gallipoli in the First World War, their lost battles against the Japanese during the fall of Singapore in 1942, and their failure to adapt to modern warfare in the 1980s show that they are not invincible. They had great victories, to be sure, but they also had more defeats than one would expect from an invincible warrior. So what do the comparisons say? Compared to elite units known worldwide, such as the French Foreign Legion, the Gurkhas stand out for their individual bravery, but are said to have some shortcomings in modern tactics and use of equipment. If we were to compare them to a group from the ancient world, the Spartans would be the closest example. But whereas the Spartan warfare system emphasized discipline and formation, the Gurkhas are characterized by individual skill. But can they still be effective in modern warfare? Wars are now won by drones, cyber attacks, and high-tech strategies. The Gurkhas still serve in the British Army, but on the modern battlefield, the old legends don't hold much water. So if you're asking whether the Gurkhas are still a decisive force in today's wars, the answer is clear. The legends live on, but wars are won differently now. Throughout history, the Gurkhas have proven their bravery on the battlefield. What set them apart from ordinary soldiers was their fearlessness, their trained instincts, and the fact that they saw war as a matter of honor rather than a profession. But did this make them invincible? The truth is that the military value of the Gurkhas is indisputable, but some of the stories are certainly exaggerated. As with any legend, fact and myth are intertwined. They are said to terrorize the battlefield with their kukri knives, but in modern warfare, with machine guns, drones, and precision-guided missiles, it is debatable how important their close combat skills are. The Gurkhas are still part of the British Army, but as warfare technology advances in the future, will old legends give way to new realities? What about you? Do you think the Gurkhas really were the most fearsome warriors in history, or are the stories exaggerated? Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Throughout history, battlefields have been defined by more than just the soldiers who fought on them. Behind every victory, there have been powerful, often unseen forces, financial backers, strategic planners, and the shadowy contributors whose roles shaped the outcomes. Royal military supremacy was never built on wealth alone. It was reinforced by the contribution of mercenaries, hired swords who fought wars in the name of kings. But the dynamics of warfare have evolved, and so too have its players. Today, private military companies like Aegis Defense Services stand as the silent powerhouses of modern conflict. Founded in 2002, Aegis Defense Services quickly rose to prominence, becoming an indispensable player in the world's most volatile regions. From the war-torn streets of Iraq to the resource-rich territories of Sudan, Aegis filled a crucial gap, taking on missions that states were unwilling to tackle directly but couldn't afford to ignore. Its operations were not limited to providing armed security. They extended to safeguarding energy infrastructure, protecting diplomatic personnel, and even stabilizing regions critical to global trade and politics. Aegis didn't just respond to modern conflict, it redefined it. In an era where warfare is no longer confined to traditional battlefields, the company became a key instrument for nations like the UK, using its capabilities to advance geopolitical objectives. Whether it was ensuring the uninterrupted flow of oil through the Middle East or maintaining the stability of African nations teetering on the brink of chaos, Aegis became more than just a contractor. It became a strategic ally. The UK's reliance on Aegis reflects a deeper shift in global conflict dynamics. Gone are the days when wars were fought solely by national armies under clear banners. Today, the lines are blurred, with private forces operating in the gray areas of modern warfare. Aegis, with its blend of military precision and strategic foresight, stands as a symbol of this transformation. It operates in the shadows of global politics, carrying out missions that redefine the meaning of power on the battlefield and beyond. As Aegis took on roles traditionally reserved for national armies, its influence grew, not just for its ability to deliver operational results, but for its strategic mastery in protecting international interests. In this new order, Aegis Defense Services is not just another player. It is a force that shapes the rules, rewrites the strategies, and challenges the boundaries of what modern warfare can achieve. But what does this shift mean for the future of war? As private military companies continue to rise, they blur the lines between statecraft and corporate power, leaving us to question who truly holds the reins in this evolving era of conflict. Aegis Defense's operations in Africa have brought not only military but also economic gains for the UK. For example, during Sierra Leone's civil war in the early 2000s, Aegis stepped in to train local security forces against rebels and provide strategic support on the ground. But this intervention was not just about peacemaking. Sierra Leone has one of the largest diamond reserves in the world, and this wealth has been the root cause of conflict in the region for years. Aegis's role here allowed the UK to secure the region's resources and capitalize on them in global markets. Such intervention created a balance of power that operated behind the scenes, directly affecting Britain's economic interests. In the Middle East, the situation was even more strategic. During the Iraq War, Aegis not only intervened in conflicts on the ground, but also had the task of protecting energy lines. For example, security at Iraqi oil installations close to the Persian Gulf ensured that the flow of energy in the region was not interrupted. This stabilized not only the local economy, but also the global energy market. Britain gained not only energy security from these Aegis operations, but also a strategic advantage that strengthened its hand at the geopolitical bargaining table. While providing tangible benefits to the United Kingdom, such Aegis operations demonstrated once again the profound economic dimension of wars and conflicts. This role of modern mercenaries was reshaping not only conflicts on the ground, but also international economics and politics. Sierra Leone's diamonds and Iraq's oil are just two examples of these operations, but these two stories are enough to understand the true power of companies like Aegis in global politics. More than military successes, Aegis Defense's international operations have also been marked by controversy. Violations and human rights allegations arising from mercenaries' interactions with local populations have often made the company a target of criticism. Especially in conflict zones in Africa and the Middle East, allegations of disproportionate use of force by Aegis soldiers against civilians have mobilized human rights defenders. In places such as Sierra Leone and Iraq, these allegations have been seen as a general problem of the company's operations, not just individual mistakes. Aegis has always been on the defensive against these accusations, claiming that its operations are legitimate and in line with international standards. However, these arguments have not fully convinced public opinion, especially with the visible impact of the damage caused in conflict zones. The fact that mercenaries have undermined the trust of the local population has not only raised ethical issues, but has also set the stage for an international debate questioning the legitimacy of companies like Aegis. In the context of international law, Aegis's activities have also been questioned many times. The legal loopholes created by the company in assuming the responsibilities of states have become part of a global problem. Its close relationship with the UK government has deepened these criticisms. Aegis's covert operations on behalf of the government and its mission to protect economic interests have been viewed with suspicion by both local populations and the international community. These debates illustrate the complex position of modern mercenaries, not only on the battlefield, but also on ethical and legal platforms. Aegis's successes, as well as its criticisms, reveal the reality in the shadows of modern warfare. But how legitimate is the place of such companies in the international order? Or are actors like Aegis simply a means for states to delegate their responsibilities to others? Aegis Defense Services is a silent force in the invisible face of modern conflicts. More than a military company, it has become a hidden actor in global security strategies. The fact that it can operate in parallel with the official armies of states raises profound questions about international law and ethical values. The fact that mercenaries play such an active role directly affects not only the battlefields, but also geopolitical dynamics. Experts have different views on this new balance of power. Security analyst Sarah Newton argues that companies such as Aegis allow states to defend their interests in a more direct and anonymous way, but that this creates the risk of unregulated operations. According to Newton, such companies can lead to a loss of state transparency and a proliferation of dark spots in international relations. Aegis influence is felt not only on the ground, but also in the political and economic dimensions of war. But it also calls into question the place of unchecked forces in the world order. The role of mercenaries in modern warfare is likely to determine not only future security strategies, but also how states redefine their responsibilities. Aegis Defense is both a tool and a powerhouse in the invisible face of modern warfare. The company's success in defending the UK's interests has redefined global security dynamics and made the role of mercenaries on the battlefield inevitable. However, these successes have also raised big questions. To what extent can a state control warfare if it is so dependent on a power outside its own military? Aegis's activities not only provided military superiority, but also deepened the economic and political dimensions of the war. Their operations, ranging from diamond mines in Sierra Leone to oil fields in Iraq, have demonstrated that these companies not only provide security, but also play an active role in protecting resources and maintaining the global balance of power. However, the human rights violations and ethical issues overshadowing such operations call into question the sustainability of this structure. As a result, companies like Aegis Defense continue to push the boundaries of international law and ethics, reflecting the increasingly complex nature of wars. Is the presence of mercenaries on the battlefield merely a strategic advantage or a dangerous transformation for humanity? These questions will define not only Aegis, but also the future of modern warfare. Do you think that the role of such companies on the battlefield is making the world a more insecure place while reducing the responsibilities of states? Share your thoughts in the comments and join this debate. In September 2022, a video surfaced showing Yevgeny Prigozhin, a prominent figure closely tied to Vladimir Putin, addressing inmates in a Russian prison. In the video, Prigozhin offered prisoners the chance to fight in Ukraine, bringing him directly into the public eye. Known as Putin's chef for his lucrative catering ventures in the 1990s, Prigozhin had previously operated discreetly, avoiding public scrutiny. Despite Western officials consistently linking him to the Wagner Group, the Kremlin denied its existence, framing Wagner as a rumor rather than a reality. Unlike conventional private military companies, the Wagner Group functions as a state-backed paramilitary network, blending shadowy operations with brutal efficiency. Known for heinous acts, including civilian massacres and resource plundering, Wagner directs its gains, whether financial or strategic, back to the Kremlin. The 2022 video marked a pivotal moment as Prigozhin openly acknowledged his leadership of the group, referring to Wagner as his organization and solidifying his position of authority. This declaration not only shattered the facade of plausible deniability, but also underscored Wagner's role in orchestrating large-scale economic and military ventures. From securing weaponry to exploiting valuable resources, the group epitomizes a chilling synthesis of violence and profit. The Wagner Group, a covert paramilitary organization closely tied to Yevgeny Prigozhin, has emerged as a critical tool in Russia's global strategy. Renowned for its ruthless tactics, Wagner operates across Africa, Syria, and Ukraine, deploying an estimated 50,000 personnel, including 40,000 convicts recruited from Russian prisons. In just a decade, the group has transformed from a modest mercenary outfit into a vast state-backed network spanning 4 continents. For President Putin, Wagner serves as a vital instrument to project Russian power while bypassing direct accountability. By outsourcing politically sensitive operations to Wagner, Putin advances his ambition to restore Russia's status as a dominant global force. Investigations by the Wall Street Journal have identified 64 companies linked to Prigozhin, many of which function as shell corporations to disguise the financial flows sustaining Wagner's activities. These funds, funneled through opaque channels, finance everything from salaries to weaponry and logistics, all while shielding the Kremlin from international scrutiny. Wagner's operations embody a calculated strategy to expand Russian influence covertly. Its ability to operate outside the bounds of conventional military oversight enables Moscow to pursue its geopolitical goals with plausible deniability, leaving a trail of destabilization and human suffering in its wake. Sanctions against the Wagner Group often resemble a game of whack-a-mole. As soon as one front company is dismantled, new ones emerge to take its place. Operating entirely to serve the Russian state, Wagner's origins and funding have been deliberately obscured. At the center of this financial web is Yevgeny Prigozhin, who used his catering company, Concord, to secure lucrative defense contracts, ostensibly for providing services to the Russian military. However, much of this revenue was covertly funneled into Wagner's operations, employing tactics akin to money laundering. Concord acted as a facade, enabling Wagner's violent and strategic campaigns to thrive under the guise of legitimate business dealings. Wagner's operational roots trace back to 2014, during Russia's annexation of Crimea and the conflict in Donbas. Unmarked operatives, known as Little Green Men, supported pro-Russian separatists, providing Moscow with plausible deniability. Among these shadowy forces, Wagner emerged as a prominent actor, portrayed as local insurgents rising against Kyiv's control. This deception allowed the Kremlin to advance its ambitions in Ukraine while shielding its regular military forces from international accountability. For years, the Kremlin denied any involvement in eastern Ukraine, insisting that pro-Russian forces were merely local residents. Yet Wagner's role was unmistakable. Dmitry Utkin, a neo-Nazi sympathizer whose call sign Wagner gave the group its name, led these covert operations. Initially, Wagner functioned as a death squad, eliminating pro-Russian separatists who opposed Kremlin orders, including those resisting ceasefire negotiations with Ukraine. This ruthless efficiency made Wagner an indispensable tool in Moscow's shadow warfare.
Wagner's influence expanded rapidly, transforming the group into a pivotal instrument for Putin's regime to carry out covert operations without direct accountability. The Syrian civil war in 2015 marked a critical juncture for Wagner, as it provided military support to the Assad regime in exchange for shares of Syria's oil and gas production. Through contracts with entities like Evropolis, Wagner secured up to 25% of production from captured energy fields, generating tens of millions of dollars annually. By 2017, the group had taken control of at least 4 major oil and gas fields, leveraging Russian military resources to dominate operations. The Al-Shar gas field exemplifies Wagner's notorious brutality. During a battle against ISIS, Wagner fighters executed a Syrian soldier, Mohammed Ismail, in a gruesome and publicized act intended to instill fear. This display of psychological warfare became a hallmark of Wagner's approach, leaving a trail of terror in its wake. In 2018, Wagner attempted to capture the Conoco gas plant, a site defended by US-backed forces. The confrontation ended disastrously for Wagner, with significant losses following a US airstrike. Despite the failure, their involvement served a strategic purpose, absorbing losses that might otherwise have fallen on regular Russian military units. Wagner's deep integration with Russian forces was evident in their shared use of bases, aircraft, and logistical infrastructure, highlighting their role as a shadow arm of the Kremlin's ambitions. By 2019, Wagner-linked companies had secured rights to vast stretches of Syrian territory, covering tens of thousands of square miles for resource exploitation. These ventures showcased Wagner's dual identity, a profit-driven enterprise and a strategic instrument for advancing Russia's geopolitical goals.
Building on its operations in Syria, Wagner adapted its resource-driven model to Africa, establishing a strong foothold across the continent. In 2018, the group arrived in the Central African Republic, CR, offering military training and securing mining rights through shell companies like Sewa Security Services, a subsidiary of Lobe Invest. These entities obtained licenses to exploit key resources, including the Ndasima gold mine. Once a small-scale operation, the Ndasima mine was transformed by Wagner into CAR's first industrialized gold mine, producing billions in potential revenue. Satellite imagery revealed significant development, with visible heavy machinery and vehicles tied to Wagner's operations. However, these economic gains came at a steep human cost. In 2021, Wagner forces targeted the Muslim community in the village of Boyo, accusing them of aiding rebel groups. The Boyo massacre, documented by the UN, stands as a grim example of Wagner's brutal methods, which have left a trail of atrocities across Africa. Wagner's operations in Africa adhere to a well-honed playbook: secure military agreements, provide arms and personnel, and monopolize resource extraction. To bolster its image as a benevolent force, Wagner deploys extensive propaganda featuring Soviet-style billboards and even children's cartoons to manipulate public perception. Meanwhile, Wagner-linked companies continue expanding into nations like Burkina Faso, Chad, and Ivory Coast. Each weapon supplied and resource extracted serves Russia's larger geopolitical ambitions, shielding the Kremlin from sanctions' economic fallout and fueling its global aspirations. Following its substantial gains in Africa, Wagner was redirected to Ukraine, where it became indispensable in Russia's war effort. African revenues, amounting to millions annually, were funneled to support the conflict. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, Wagner's role has grown significantly, especially as the regular Russian military struggled with setbacks and logistical failures. Investigations uncovered that Prigozhin-linked companies amassed over $5 billion in contracts since 2014, with a sharp increase after the war began, further highlighting Wagner's economic importance to the Kremlin. Wagner's notorious brutality was starkly visible near Kyiv, where the group operated as interrogation and torture squads in villages like Motizhin. As the conflict shifted to eastern Ukraine, Wagner became a critical force on the front lines, bolstering Russia's troop numbers and operational capacity. To offset battlefield losses, Wagner initiated large-scale prisoner recruitment, a grim tactic reminiscent of Stalin-era strategies, sending convicts to fight as expendable troops. Social media evidence verified by credible investigations revealed prisoners being transported to the front lines using state resources. Irrefutable proof of Wagner's deep integration with Kremlin directives. By 2023, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who began his ascent as Putin's chef, publicly criticized Russia's Ministry of Defense, a bold move that underscored the unprecedented influence he had accumulated. Yet, Wagner's future hangs in the balance. With intensifying sanctions and growing international scrutiny, the group may resort to rebranding, operating under new names to preserve its activities. Despite this, Wagner's global footprint now extends across 4 continents, including regions like Latin America, where it exacerbates instability in areas already struggling with weak governance and fragile security. The consequences of Wagner's operations are far-reaching, undermining democratic institutions and perpetuating cycles of violence. Its activities not only destabilize governments, but also exact a heavy toll on civilian populations, exposing the devastating human cost of its ambitions. Wagner is more than a paramilitary group. It is a mechanism for Russia to project power in the shadows, leaving behind chaos and suffering in its wake. As Wagner Group continues to adapt and evolve, its shadow looms larger over geopolitics. But how long can it sustain its operations under mounting pressure? And what does this mean for the nations caught in its grasp? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the forces shaping our world today.
Blackwater has been a recurring name in the news. Known for providing private security, the firm operated extensively in Iraq, primarily protecting diplomats and ambassadors under contracts with the U.S. State Department. The company, now operating under a different name, remains tied to the early years of the so-called War on Terror, an era that brought Blackwater billions of dollars in profit. Initially tasked with guarding American officials, the invasion of Iraq turned into a lucrative venture for the company. However, Blackwater soon faced allegations that thrust it into controversy. Its founder, Eric Prince, was accused of overseeing war crimes committed by the firm during the Iraq War. The Bush administration's deployment of over 100,000 private contractors made Blackwater a dominant force, often described as a private Praetorian Guard. Despite its significant role, Blackwater's operations remain cloaked in secrecy, with Congress struggling to obtain details about its activities. A quick search of Blackwater reveals a string of scandals and controversies. As one of the most polarizing private military contractors during the War on Terror, Blackwater operated much like a private army, profiting heavily from one of the most expensive wars in history. By the end, they secured over $1 billion in government contracts. The company was founded by Eric Prince, a former Navy SEAL often labeled by the media as a right-wing Christian conservative and an ally of President Bush. Blackwater branded itself as the FedEx of national security, providing mercenary services for the U.S. government. However, a deadly 2007 shootout involving Blackwater contractors marked a turning point. Politicians, the public, and the media branded the firm as war profiteers, criminals, and unchecked bullies. Facing intense scrutiny, Blackwater eventually ceased operations under its original name. Despite widespread condemnation, a thought-provoking perspective suggests caution against unanimous judgments. Billionaire Peter Thiel argues that when consensus silences dissent, it can signal a shift toward a one-party state of thought, be it Silicon Valley's ideological conformity or Blackwater's universal vilification. This raises the question, is there more to the story? According to its founder, Eric Prince, Blackwater's story is one of unsung patriots who risked their lives to protect others, only to become scapegoats when lawyers and politicians needed someone to blame. But this raises a divisive question. Were they patriotic heroes or reckless war profiteers? This is the story of the rise and fall of what was once the world's most powerful private army. So, who were these contractors? Hired guns and mercenaries paid over $1 billion taxpayer dollars since 2003 to protect diplomats and officials abroad. Blackwater's rapid ascent aligned with the Bush administration's aggressive push for privatization. Yet it left lingering questions. Were political connections fueling its success? And at what cost to accountability? Blackwater and other military contractors often operated without accountability. Critics argue they benefited from a revolving door, where the Bush administration and its allies shielded them from meaningful oversight while profiting from their services. Blackwater's origins trace back to Eric Prince's time as a Navy SEAL in the 1990s. The Cold War had just ended, and the U.S. military faced significant budget cuts despite ongoing conflicts like the Yugoslav Wars. Navy SEALs and other elite forces struggled to find adequate training facilities, often overcrowding existing ranges. Prince saw a gap. While pilots had flight schools, there was no dedicated training ground for elite soldiers. This inspired him to create Blackwater in 1997, opening a state-of-the-art facility in North Carolina. Named after the dark swamp water on the land, it became the largest shooting range in the U.S., generating $400,000 in its first year. Initially, it was simply a training center, nothing more. Blackwater's original mission didn't involve deploying contractors overseas, but after 9/11s, as the U.S. planned its retaliation through Operation Enduring Freedom, that changed. The CIA needed connections in Afghanistan with individuals they couldn't approach directly due to political risks. Blackwater, free from such constraints, facilitated these introductions, helping to establish critical alliances. Eric Prince later claimed this move wasn't driven by profit, as the company didn't charge the CIA for opening their network. This collaboration highlighted how private companies could support military and intelligence operations. Soon, the CIA offered Blackwater a contract to provide security for their growing network of bases in Afghanistan. With a roster of former Special Forces personnel, Blackwater secured its first Middle East contract, a modest beginning to what would become a meteoric rise. The company's trajectory accelerated with the U.S. invasion of Iraq under Operation Iraqi Freedom. As Saddam Hussein's government fell and U.S. forces occupied the country, Blackwater's role expanded. Enter Paul Bremer, who would play a pivotal part in reshaping both Iraq and Blackwater's fortunes. Paul Bremer was appointed as head of the Coalition Provisional Authority, CPA, tasked with rebuilding Iraq. Effectively the most powerful man in the country, he was also its most targeted. According to Bremer, U.S. Secret Service assessments deemed him the most threatened American official in the world. With Pentagon Protective Services overstretched, the $21.3 million contract to guard Bremer went to Blackwater. They deployed a 36-man team with 3 small helicopters, paying contractors $600 per day, 4 times the average Special Forces salary. Bremer became so hated by insurgents that they reportedly offered $30,000 for the body of a Blackwater guard. Yet, during the 11-month assignment, Blackwater kept Bremer safe without a single injury. Their success made Blackwater indispensable, quickly securing contracts with the Department of Defense, State Department, and CIA worldwide. By mid-2004, their bear paw logo was ubiquitous in Iraq, even worn by Iraqi civilians. Blackwater's reach extended to the mountains of Pakistan, where their contractors aided soldiers caught in a days-long firefight with dwindling supplies. When U.S. troops in the mountains of Pakistan were running out of ammunition, the military couldn't risk a resupply mission due to the dangerous drop zone. Blackwater stepped in, sending a plane packed with ammo, free of charge and without the delays of bureaucracy. After several successful missions, the Pentagon awarded Blackwater a $34.8 million contract, their largest yet, surpassing all previous deals combined. This moment exemplifies Blackwater's business model, stepping in where military bureaucracy slows operations. Private military contractors, PMCs, promise quicker, more efficient services in war zones, from security to logistics. While often marketed as cost-effective alternatives, the reality doesn't always match the claim. As Eric Prince described it, Blackwater could be the FedEx to the Pentagon's postal service. The goal wasn't to replace the military, but to fill critical logistical gaps, ensuring operations moved faster in life and death situations. Blackwater's rise brought immense profits, but its dependence on government contracts also led to its downfall. After scandals tarnished its reputation, the company rebranded as XE Services in 2009, symbolizing a shift to a low-profile image. By 2010, founder Eric Prince stepped down, selling the company. Renamed Academy, it continues to operate under new ownership. Prince relocated to Abu Dhabi, where he remains today. This story is a stark reminder. The government can make you rich, but it can just as easily take it all away. Despite the controversies, no one under Blackwater's protection lost their life, a testament to the company's effectiveness in its role. Today, the private military industry is massive, expected to grow to $81 billion in the U.S. alone. Private security raises a contentious question. If war is inevitable, should nations rely on a draft, sending ordinary citizens into battle, or hire trained professionals willing to take on the job? It's a debate that shapes the future of modern warfare. The private military world remains active and growing, a topic for another time. As long as humanity exists, war will endure, waiting for its next chapter. Launched by Chinese President Xi Jinping in 2013, the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, is a massive infrastructure push spanning Asia, Europe, and Africa. The official narrative presents it as a modern Silk Road. But the real aim of the project is to expand China's global strategic power. But a project of this magnitude carries serious security risks. Unstable regions along the project route threaten China's multi-billion-dollar investments. And this is where China's mercenary armies and private military companies, PMCs, come into play.
Initially, China relied on local security forces and diplomatic measures. But infrastructure projects in Africa and energy investments in Central Asia have created new security challenges for China. The solution was to take inspiration from the Western mercenary model in Iraq and Afghanistan. PMCs are Chinese-backed but privately run security forces. They offer not only armed protection, but also risk analysis, hostage rescue, logistical support, and cooperation with local forces. The main objective is to protect China's economic assets while avoiding geopolitical pressures without direct military presence. China's PMC move was put in place not only to ensure security, but also to expand its global influence. The railroads, ports, power lines, and mines along the Belt and Road Project were the most sensitive points of China's economic interests. Special security forces were deployed to protect these assets. But China's goal was not only to secure infrastructure. The PMCs were designed as a flexible tool to allow Beijing to expand its influence while avoiding diplomatic pressure. One of the first deployments took place at the port of Gwadar in Pakistan. While the area was often the target of terrorist attacks, Chinese PMCs secured the port. Similarly, mercenary teams have been deployed to mining operations in Africa. Protecting Chinese investors has increased the stability of Beijing's projects, while at the same time strengthening the Chinese presence in the region. After the introduction of its PMCs, China made a series of strategic moves to increase its global influence. These mercenary armies were intended both to protect economic investments and to expand Beijing's geopolitical power. China's PMCs have stepped in to protect critical infrastructure in areas of terrorist attacks and internal conflict. For example, the port of Gwadar in Pakistan was under threat from separatist groups, but Chinese PMCs set up security perimeters and prevented attacks. Similarly, operations were organized against armed groups in mining regions in Africa. Thanks to these mercenary armies, Chinese investments are protected while the state secures its projects without direct military intervention. PMCs have not only provided a military presence, but have also been used as diplomatic tools to expand Beijing's regional influence. In Central Asia, Chinese PMCs secured pipelines and strengthened ties with local governments. In Africa, they have been deployed as a reinforcer of China's economic cooperation. These mercenaries have become not just fighters, but silent ambassadors protecting Beijing's interests on the ground. Going beyond traditional security measures, China has equipped its PMCs with high technology. Surveillance drones, AI-powered security systems, and facial recognition technologies were used to detect threats in advance. In addition, cybersecurity teams have defended against digital threats to China as part of the Belt and Road Initiative. The growing power of Chinese PMCs has been the focus of much international debate. Conflicts with local workers in Africa have raised allegations of excessive use of force. While Western countries claim that Beijing is conducting covert operations through these private military companies, the US argues that China is trying to establish a new geopolitical order through PMCs. In recent years, Chinese PMCs have become more institutionalized. Special training centers were established, professional security teams were trained, and joint exercises were organized with local security forces. China established PMC bases in countries where it has investments and started to cooperate directly with local governments. China's mercenary armies have been shaped not only to ensure the security of the Belt and Road Initiative, but also to increase its global influence and support its geopolitical strategies. In this process, Chinese PMCs have taken steps to strengthen their legal infrastructure, integrate modern warfare technologies, and cooperate with local actors. Although China tries to portray its PMCs as private companies independent from the state, these structures are known to have close ties with Beijing. In this way, China both avoids diplomatic crises and deflects international criticism. At the same time, it is working to legitimize these armies at the UN and international platforms under the pretext of ensuring local security. Stephen Walt, a security expert from Harvard University, considers China's use of mercenaries as part of its soft power strategy, and emphasizes that this method has become a tool to increase economic influence.
China is developing its PMCs not only as armed security forces, but also as professional units equipped with modern warfare technologies. The training bases opened in Africa and Central Asia provide not only military training, but also diplomatic skills to strengthen relations with the local population. In Pakistan's Balochistan region, for example, Chinese PMCs have conducted joint exercises with local police forces to develop strategies to counter both the geographical conditions of the region and terrorist threats. Technological integration is also a critical part of this process. AI-powered surveillance systems, drones, and cybersecurity solutions enable PMCs to manage both physical and digital threats. London-based military analyst Jane Peters notes that China's moves have reached a level to compete with Western private military companies. China is strengthening its PMCs not only with foreign fighters, but also by recruiting personnel from the local population. This strategy is used to mitigate local backlash and counterbalance anti-China rhetoric. In a Belt and Road project in Ethiopia, 300 local security guards were trained and employed. At the same time, direct cooperation with local governments is being developed to ensure that PMCs act as China's diplomatic ambassadors and not just military forces. The Washington-based Rand Corporation describes this strategy as a combination of economic diplomacy and military influence. Chinese PMCs ensure economic and political stability by conducting operations in strategic areas without direct military intervention. When oil fields in Sudan were under threat from local armed groups, Chinese PMCs stepped in, preventing attacks and ensuring uninterrupted oil flows. Similarly, energy pipelines in Central Asia are crucial for China's energy security. The Turkmenistan-China energy corridor is protected by PMCs both on the ground and through digital security systems. Prof. David Kilcullen of Princeton University notes that Chinese PMCs have found a modern way to win without fighting. In Africa, Chinese PMCs have filled the vacuum by providing security in areas where Western powers have withdrawn, thus helping Beijing expand its geopolitical influence. Anti-piracy operations in the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean have been a way for China to strengthen its military presence by using PMCs in maritime security. China's PMCs are no longer just commercial security providers, but an active part of global strategy, says Zhang Wei, an international relations expert at Peking University. China's PMCs were developed not only to provide security, but as an element of power that increases its global influence. With the growth of the Belt and Road Initiative, these mercenary armies have become part of military, economic, and diplomatic strategies. By portraying its PMCs as private companies independent of the state, China exploits loopholes in international law and avoids diplomatic crises. Beijing defends the legitimacy of these companies at the UN and other international fora, and continues its operations under the pretext of ensuring local security. Stephen Walt of Harvard University argues that this approach is a soft power strategy that increases China's economic influence. China is building its PMCs not just as fighters, but as professional units equipped with modern security apparatus. Specialized training bases in Africa and Central Asia provide not only military skills, but also diplomatic competencies to strengthen relations with local populations. In Pakistan's Balochistan region, for example, Chinese PMCs conducted joint exercises with local police forces to train them for the region's risks. At the same time, AI-powered surveillance systems, drones, and cybersecurity solutions have increased their influence. London-based analyst Jane Peters notes that China's PMC technology has now reached a level where it can compete with its Western rivals. Chinese PMCs are using local labor to build better relations with the local population and reduce anti-Chinese rhetoric. In the Belt and Road projects in Ethiopia, 300 local security guards were trained and hired by Chinese PMCs. Beijing is also using PMCs as a diplomatic tool by establishing direct partnerships with local governments. The Rand Corporation describes this strategy as a combination of economic diplomacy and military power. Chinese PMCs are conducting operations to ensure economic and political stability without direct military intervention. Security operations against local armed groups in oil fields in Sudan have been a critical move to protect Chinese investments. Similarly, energy pipelines in Central Asia are protected by PMCs on the ground and through digital security systems. Prof. David Kilcullen of Princeton University notes that Chinese PMCs have found the modern way to win without fighting. Beyond traditional military power, China's PMCs have become a strategic tool designed to protect economic interests and gain geopolitical influence. They play a multi-layered role, from the security of the Belt and Road Initiative to China's image in the international arena. However, this system is not without risks. Growing discontent among the local population, international criticism, and the possibility of PMCs getting out of control are among the biggest problems China faces. In addition, the compliance of this structure with international law and its ethical dimension will continue to be a controversial issue on the global stage. Some experts describe China's PMC model as the strategic move of the 21st century. But the sustainability of this model remains uncertain. How Beijing expands this strategy by controlling and legitimizing its PMCs will be an important factor that will determine the future of China's vision of global leadership. In conclusion, through mercenary armies, China is securing not only its economic investments, but also its global strategic goals. However, this success is directly linked to maintaining balance and gaining legitimacy. China's PMCs are not just a security investment, but a new paradigm shaping the balance of power in the modern era.